This is the shocking story of two sisters, female soldiers, conscripted into the brutal army of the fictional oppressive state of Khaznia. After enduring beatings and sexual assault, they risk their lives to escape, eventually crossing the ocean to seek asylum in the United States. They settle in a small Appalachian town where, with the help of a man in his 60s, the sisters give birth to the children conceived from their trauma. Before you watch the video, please subscribe and like. It's a great help to us. It was a late summer evening, the humid air still heavy with the day's heat. In a shabby, desolate corner of their barracks in Khaznia, 26-year-old Elena and 24-year-old Sofia huddled together, exchanging tense glances. Though the sisters had always been perfectly in sync at this moment, they were so on edge that even the sound of each other's breathing was startling. "Sister, if we don't run now, our lives are over," Sofia whispered in a low voice. The oppression and violence they endured as women in the Khaznian military were beyond imagination. The constant beatings were compounded by sexual abuse from their superiors, and the sisters had reached their breaking point. Day by day, they had held on, but a recent brutal assault and threat from a commanding officer, and the resulting possibility of pregnancy, had pushed their lives to the brink of ruin. "But if we're caught, we'll be executed on the spot." Elena's voice trembled. However, a firm resolve had already taken root in her mind. It was better to die trying to escape than to die here. Though they wore military uniforms, their exhausted bodies were covered in bruises and cuts. Just as their spirits were about to break, they could no longer bear the screams and cries of the other female conscripts around them. A single look between them at night was all it took. The decision was made with a single word: "Let's go." The discipline in the unit was ironclad, but they had to find a time when the guard was weakest. To escape under the cover of night, they would have to cross the barbed wire fence at the edge of the base, a process that could easily erupt into a gunfight. The fear of death was overwhelming, but the outcome of staying was already too desperate to contemplate. Sofia's determination was unwavering. "We're betting our lives on this. If even one of us survives, that's enough." Elena squeezed Sofia's hand. The trembling she felt in that small hand and the sound of their hearts pounding against each other spoke of their desperation. The following night, the sisters smeared their bodies with mud and soot, dressed in their dark uniforms, and consumed by fear, began to move slowly toward the base's barbed wire fence. The Khaznian army has a zero-tolerance policy for deserters. Guard posts are manned vigilantly, and commanders are always on alert. For months, the sisters had secretly gathered information. They learned which guard post had the longest gap during shift changes, where patrols were known to doze off, and even that a specific section of the fence was old and slightly bent. That night, they slipped out of the barracks and, holding their breath, crawled through the darkness. With a small pair of pliers and an old utility knife, they tried to cut the wire, but even the rusted sections were stronger than they expected. "Damn it!" Sofia cursed under her breath. She applied force with the pliers again and again, but the wire wouldn't give. In the distance, the beam of a flashlight flickered. At that moment, Elena desperately pulled the fence apart with her hands. "I'll make the opening wider. You go first," she whispered urgently. Sofia hesitated, but seeing her sister's outstretched, straining arms, she made her move. As she did, a piece of sharp wire snapped back, tearing open Elena's palm. "Ah!" A small cry escaped Elena's lips, but she clenched her teeth. Sofia twisted her body and squeezed through. From the outside, she pulled the fence wider to help her sister. With a grunt, Elena finally managed to pull her body through. Blood trickled from a deep scratch on her leg, but there was no time to rest. The sisters broke into a run, sprinting until their lungs burned, terrified an alarm would sound. As dawn approached, they reached a secluded mountain valley. Covered in sweat and blood, their lips were chapped with thirst. They seemed to have shaken off their pursuers, but the path ahead was even more grueling. Clasping their blood-stained hands, they made a vow. "We will never Go back. After crossing the treacherous Kaskov Mountains and walking for days, their stamina was gone. Their only food had been a few pieces of hardtack, and that was gone. They survived on wild roots and insects. They knew their only hope was to reach a lawless port city in a neighboring country and find passage across the ocean. The rumors were terrifying. Refugees were often scammed, sold into trafficking, or left to die by ruthless smugglers, but they had no other choice. In a border town, they found a man who put them in touch with a smuggler known only as Rico. He was a man with sharp, predatory eyes. The sisters tried to negotiate. "Please get us to America. We have nothing to offer as payment now, but once we get there, we will surely—" Rico sneered. "Everyone needs money. I take risks. The price is steep. No cash you pay another way," he said bluntly. A chill ran down their spines, but they agreed. "We understand," Elena replied, her face a mask of resignation. "But we must get to America." Rico hid them in a filthy, crowded warehouse with other desperate people. Elena and Sophia suspected they were pregnant. The persistent nausea and cramping were undeniable. Rico would sometimes make sickening jokes. "Damaged goods don't fetch a high price. No reason to find you a good ship." The sisters endured it, pleading daily, "Please find us a way to America." Eventually, Rico announced a route was confirmed, a rusty cargo ship crossing the Atlantic. "Be prepared for rough seas," he snapped. "And don't you dare scream. If we get caught, it's over." They were crammed into the stinking hold of the ship with dozens of others. As the ship rocked on the violent waves, fear and seasickness took over. Dulla, unable to bear the pain in her abdomen, let out a faint scream. The journey felt like an eternity. Every time the ship lurched, the sisters clung to each other, whispering, "We have to survive." After many days, the captain announced they were approaching the rendezvous point with a smaller boat that would take them to shore. But the boat never appeared. Stranded in international waters with dwindling fuel and supplies, the captain grew furious. "The deal's off unless you pay more," he demanded. But no one had any more money. As a heated argument broke out, a crackling voice came through the radio. It was a formal English transmission. "The U.S. Coast Guard." The captain's face turned white. "Damn it! If they catch us, I'm finished. I should just throw all of you overboard," he cursed. The refugees trembled in terror. Just then, someone cried out, "Signal them for help! It's our only chance!" In the chaos, an exhausted Sophia began to sob. "If we stay here, my baby will be in danger. Please call for help." Hearing this, the strong-willed Elena felt her throat tighten. In that torturous moment, a middle-aged refugee grabbed the radio and desperately shouted, "Mayday! Mayday! We are refugees! Please help us!" After a long wait, a Coast Guard cutter appeared on the horizon. The captain hurled insults, but the situation was irreversible. The Coast Guard boarded the vessel, arresting the crew and rescuing the refugees. On the deck, Elena and Sophia clung to a rope thrown to them by the authority of a nation they had only dreamed of. Dazed and adrift, they held each other and wept. "We made it. We finally made it." They knew an investigation awaited them, but a wave of relief washed over them. They had escaped the life-or-death crisis. After being processed by the Coast Guard, the sisters were taken to a Department of Homeland Security processing center. It was a daunting bureaucratic process, but for the first time they had legal protection. They were given clean clothes, warm meals, and a medical examination. This alone was enough to bring them to tears. The exam confirmed their fears. "You are both suffering from severe anemia," the doctor said, "and an ultrasound confirms you are both pregnant." Sophia was estimated to be about 3 to 4 months along, Elena around 2 to 3. The sisters stared at each other, devastated. "What do we do now?" Sophia sobbed. The doctor advised them of their options under U.S. law, but the sisters, thinking, What crime did the children commit? Ultimately decided to keep them. Following this, they testified in detail about the human rights abuses in Chasnia. This is valuable information for your asylum case, but your first priority is to find stability, an officer told them. They were granted temporary protected status and moved to a refugee resettlement center. Here they received counseling, English classes, and cultural orientation. It was a restricted but safe environment, a world away from the hell they had escaped. Dula's counseling slowly helped her process the trauma, and Elena focused on her recovery. They would weep when they spoke of their children, but a faint hope began to grow. As their time at the center ended, their health stabilized, but they had nowhere to go. It was then that a caseworker cautiously introduced them to someone who wanted to help a man in his 60s named Sam Miller, who lived in a small mountain town called Harmony Creek in the heart of Appalachia. He's a widower who lives alone, the caseworker explained. He's helped a few refugee families get on their feet before. If you're willing, you could stay on his farm and he'll help you through the births. The sisters were hesitant. A rural town would be isolated, but it might also be a peaceful place to have their children. They desperately needed help. When the caseworker called, Sam readily agreed. "A body's gotta have a place to land," he said in a gentle drawl. "Can't just turn away folks who've come so far, especially with little ones on the way." After a long Greyhound bus ride, they arrived in the late afternoon. The scenery was a patchwork of rolling hills, deep forests, and small farmhouses. At the bus stop, an old Ford pickup truck was parked. Standing beside it was 66-year-old Sam Miller. He was of medium height, with deep lines on his face and a warm smile. "Hello, we are Elena and Sophia," they said cautiously. "Well, now welcome to Harmony Creek," he said warmly. The journey must have been something fierce. Though a little scared, they felt a strange sense of relief at his hearty laugh. "My house ain't much, but there's room. The folks around here will help out too," he said. After drifting across the world, it felt like they had finally arrived somewhere that felt a little like home. Sam's house was an old farmhouse with a porch swing, a vegetable garden, and a chicken coop. An old hand pump in the yard drew up cool, fresh water. The sisters were busy for days adjusting, but thanks to the hearty meals Sam cooked and the casseroles and fresh produce brought by neighbors, they were healthier than they had been in years. As they approached 8 months of pregnancy, Sophia's belly was so large that walking was difficult. Every morning, Sam would bring them something. The ladies from the church sent over some cornbread. "Y'all hungry?" The sisters gradually opened their hearts. The townspeople, initially curious, soon warmed to them after Sam declared, "They're good girls." Local farmers would drop off eggs and milk. "2 babies on the way, Lord have mercy, y'all need anything, you just say the word." The older women from the church brought them hand-knitted baby blankets and offered advice. But one night, crisis struck. Sophia, much earlier than her due date, began to complain of severe abdominal pain. Elena felt contractions too, but Sophia's condition was far more serious. Cold sweat poured down her face. "No, it's not time yet," she cried. Around midnight, Sam heard their screams and rushed in. "Good Lord, what is it?" He panicked, calling the town's volunteer emergency services. His hands trembled. "What if I can't help them?" A local clinic nurse and a few women from the church rushed over. "Her condition isn't good," the nurse muttered, checking Sophia's vitals. "We need to get her to the hospital in the city fast." But it was at least a 2-hour drive through the mountains. Just then, Elena also cried out in pain. "Something's wrong with me too." It was chaos. Sam felt utterly helpless. Then the faces of the sisters who had survived so much flashed before his eyes. He slammed his fist on the doorframe and roared, "Hey, Elena, Sophia, you listen to me. You get a hold of yourselves. What in God's name did you come all this way for to give up now?" The villagers were stunned. They had never heard the gentle man shout like that. The sisters, startled, looked at him. "You survived that hellhole, didn't you? You crossed an ocean. You overcame death 12 times. What's the point of quitting here? You hold on. If the mother loses her nerve, the baby's in danger too." His voice was like a drill sergeant's, but it was filled with desperate care. Dula trembled, but his fierce roar made her find a new reserve of strength. "He's right. We have to save our babies." Finally, the ambulance arrived. Sam jumped in the back. "I'm coming with you," he shouted. During the ride on the winding mountain roads, Sophia drifted in and out of consciousness. Elena, nauseous and terrified, never let go of her sister's hand. Sam's eyes welled with tears. Why must they suffer so much? At the regional hospital, the medical staff rushed the sisters to the maternity ward. "Both are in labor. One is premature. The guardian, please wait outside," a doctor said gravely. Sam slumped into a chair in the waiting room, clasping his hands and praying. After an eternity, a doctor emerged. "I'll start with Ms. Sophia. The baby is premature, but we delivered her safely. The mother had severe bleeding, but she's stable now." At those words, Sam let out a sob of relief. The doctor continued. "Ms. Elena also went into labor, and we delivered her baby as well. Both were high risk, but for now the mothers and babies have passed the critical stage, though they'll need to be in the NICU." Sam collapsed back into his chair. Thank you so much." For both sisters to give birth at the same time, it had to be fate. Though the babies were in incubators, their lives had been saved. A few days later, the sisters were moved to a general ward. They were gaunt, but they were able to hold their babies. Sophia cradled her tiny daughter and wept. "My baby." Elena, too, carefully looked at her own son. He was her new hope. Sam visited every day with food and supplies. "You don't need to do all this," they would say. He would just laugh. "If I don't, who will? I've already grown attached." At his warmth, like that of a father, they never had, the sisters wept. After a month, they returned to Harmony Creek. The town had prepared a welcome. A banner on the porch read, "Welcome home, little ones," and the church had organized a meal train for a month. The babies, though still fragile, slowly grew stronger in the clean mountain air. As their strength returned, the sisters resolved to build a life. With Sam's help, they navigated the complex asylum process. They also began to feel a desire to help others. "When I think of our pain, I know so many other refugees are suffering," Elena said. Sophia agreed. "I want to help victims of trafficking and abuse. We know their pain." Sam was proud. "Who else could do it? If there's anything I can do to help, I will. Be brave," he encouraged. The seasons turned. The annual Harmony Creek Founders Day festival was approaching. The sisters decided to participate, setting up a small table with a traditional dish from Kaznia. Although it was unfamiliar, the townspeople eagerly sampled it. My, this is different," they'd say, enjoying the novelty. On the last evening during the community talent show, Sophia went on stage. "Since coming to this town, I have received so much help. I feel I've met my saviors. So today, I want to read a letter to Sam." Sam, looking flustered, waved his hand. "Oh goodness, no need for that." But Sophia, with a face mixed with laughter and tears, unfolded a paper. "Sam and everyone in Harmony Creek. My sister and I had no one to trust. But here we were, given a new life. Thank you for allowing our children, born from such darkness, to grow up in this warm and loving place. Sam, sometimes your angry shouts gave us the most strength. Get a hold of yourselves. Hold on." Without those words, we might have given up. In the future, we will never forget this kindness and will dedicate ourselves to helping other refugees. Sophia couldn't finish. her voice choked with emotion. The townspeople wiped their eyes, and Sam turned his head to hide his tears. When Sophia came down from the stage, Sam embraced her. "No, I'm the one who's thankful," he said. "This town is more alive because of you." The crowd responded with applause. Time passed, and the sisters were officially granted asylum, receiving their green cards. When their children turned 1, the whole town threw a potluck birthday party. Sam gifted each child a $100 savings bond. "I don't know how much longer I've got," he said, his eyes wet, "but seeing you all thrive is all the reward I need." The sisters began volunteering at a refugee aid organization in a nearby city. They would take their children with them, wanting to offer a sliver of hope to others who had endured similar journeys. 2 years passed. The children were toddling around the farmhouse yard calling Sam Gampa. The sisters tended the garden and worked part-time at the general store. "Someday when the kids are in school, I want to train to be a social worker," Elena planned. "And I want to become a certified translator to help people like us," Sophia added. On a clear spring day, Sam sat on his porch watching the sisters play with their children. A gentle breeze blew. The sisters looked at each other and thought, "Isn't this the peace we dreamed of?" They knew this peace wasn't simply given. It was earned through survival and built by the kindness of strangers, especially Sam. As evening fell, Sam called out, "Supper's ready!" They gathered around the small table. When the children laughed, a smile spread across Sam's face, and the sisters would suddenly remember that night crossing the fence bleeding and terrified, crying for rescue on the open ocean, trembling in the hospital, and Sam's roar to "Get a hold of yourselves" that pushed them over the final hurdle. And they had a thought. Now we can be the ones to shout to others, "Get a hold of yourself." We can survive if we stick together, for a world where no one is left behind. The evening light filtering through the trees was a brilliant, radiant red. Within it, the sisters pictured the warm life that would continue, and they smiled. Thank you for watching today. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe and like.